Hey folks! I'm going to attempt to show you how to properly shade, and I'm pretty sure I'm out of focus right now, but there's nothing I can do about it. Okay, it's 6:30 and I haven't done any studying for any of my tests. Plus, I'm nowhere near done with this video. Okay, so I've sketched out what I'm going to draw. And I honestly did not take very much time on this sketch because I'm not really focused on the drawing of it, just more the shading. This is a curtain tied up in the middle, and it honestly doesn't look like that right now, but I think it will once I shade it. Something I suggest a lot of times is practicing gradient scales, shading from light to dark or dark to light, just to really get in the flow of, slowly moving between dark and light values. A lot of artists suggest going from light to dark whenever you're doing this with shading or doing your gradient skills. But honestly, I personally like to go from dark to light. I'm not sure why. For me, it's easier to slowly begin to pick up your pencil more and more rather than slowly press harder and shade. A huge thing with shadows is that they are never hard lines. I don't suggest drawing out your shadows with a line first. So I wouldn't suggest going in and drawing the edge of your shadow because that's going to show up most likely. Why am I using a mechanical pencil? I don't know. I guess it's time for a kitten break. I don't really know what's happening. Okay, so right now I'm just following the picture shadow. Okay, so I've created that very dark shadow. You don't really have to do this right now. You can go back in later, but I would like to show you now. I go in with a blending stump and blend. I usually move in really small circles rather than streaks. Okay, so I've created that very dark shadow that kind of demonstrates a fold in the curtain. And I use the blending stump to blend it over really well and make it really smooth. Okay, so a little trick I've learned just recently, and I don't know how suggested this is because I feel like I shouldn't do it, but I actually use my blending stump to shade. I don't put any graphite down first. I just use my blending stump and what's left on it. So above the shadow here, in this little crevice, I guess, are these very light shadows. And sometimes I'll come in with a blending stump and create those lines. Very lightly. Depending on how dirty your blending stump is, you may have a lot more graphite on it. And I might even drag up some of this graphite from down here and pull it in there. So as I'm doing this, I'm continuously looking at my photo to make sure, I'm making these shadows in the right spots. And with this specific sketch, it's, okay if I get my shadows a little off. I know I am. With some sketches, maybe like a face, it's very important to focus on comparing it to the photo and trying to get those shadows in the right spot and not allowing your mind to say, well, I think the shadow should be over here. No, look at the photo and really compare them. Okay, so I'm just going to continue shading with those things I've talked about, comparing it to my photo, using my blending stump in some of the very light areas with the graphite already on my blending stump. And then also not making direct lines when working. Another big thing with shading is your highlights. You really want them to pop, so where I find that there's really light spots, I won't add in graphite or anything whatsoever to really make those highlights contrast with the dark shadows. I learned that the best way to shade is to move in very small circles, not only with your blending stump, but also with your pencil, not making long streaks because this won't blend into a shadow and will just look like a long line. a lot of times what I'll see with graphite shaded pieces is that the contrast is not high enough, it's not different enough, it doesn't show really dark values that really portrays the depth of the piece. So I always advise to go back in and really darken those areas that show dark shadows. So like down here, this is a very dark shadow, and I usually go in with a darker pencil, but I don't have one available right now, and just really redarken it to give it that high contrast against its light values. The other thing is just, try not to be a disappointment to Mrs. Dvorak.